Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Day 1 press conference for the 2016 Sundance Film Festival. I'm Sean Means. I'm the movie critic for the Salt Lake Tribune. I'll be moderating today. We have with us here John Cooper, director of the Sundance Film Festival. Thank you. Keri Putnam, executive director of the Sundance Institute. And actor, director, producer, and founder of Sundance Institute, Robert Redford. So how this is going to work is I'll ask a few questions and get the conversation started up here for a few minutes, and then we'll start taking questions. And we have our two mic runners who will be bringing the mic to you if you have questions. And also, the press folks wanted me to remind you that have you look in the press packet. There's some trivia questions in the back if you want to have a little fun after we're done. So, starting out, the first question I want to sort of ask is just for generally, what are you most looking forward to out of the festival this year?
The rap party. No, whatever.
I think it's working. No?
Is it up?
I don't. Oh yes, I'm sorry. What I'm looking forward to, and I think I speak for all of us on this, is the audience response. What the takeaway is going to be for this festival? Because we come into it, nothing is predetermined. It's like a blank slate. So you don't know how it's all going to go, and you wait to see what the audience takes away at the end. And I think that's probably what interests me, aside from the fact that we're creating an opportunity. The point of it all in the first place was to create an opportunity for new voices in film to have a place to speak. So it's what people take away that I'm curious about.
I agree with that completely, but I'll also add, I think I'm excited about how many different forms are available for independent storytellers now and how that's reflected here at the festival, whether it's a feature-length film or documentary, a short film, episodic content, what we're seeing in VR. I think the palette for independent storytellers is just widening, and I love seeing what happens. So.
And you've actually seen everything, so you...
I know, I'm looking forward to the handoff. The handoff from what's been in my programmers. I have an amazing staff. We've been holding this thing for, seems like a year. It's only been a couple of months, but the handoff where it leaves us and goes into the atmosphere and is with our audiences, because that's the most exciting part about this festival is really the audience, the energy that they bring to this whole event is what is exciting for us, how the films are going to play. And to talk about those films, because they're very diverse films, and I think it's going to be a really exciting year.
Okay. It seems like there are a fair number of films that are very issue-driven and really pointing to major issues, and maybe because it's an election year, we notice that sort of thing more. But what are you looking at as far as what's going to guide the conversation going into this election year?
Well, the election. Well, I don't know what's in the festival in terms of politics. Cooper knows more about that. But quickly before we go on, I just want to say something about John, what he's up against, because a lot of people aren't aware that from the time we first started this, the increase in applications has gone to 12,000. And that's a monster to deal with, because what's your criteria going to look like for how you choose the very few that can come in? So that's a lot of pressure on John that a lot of people, and Trevor and the group that puts it together, a lot of people aren't aware of the pressure they're under. And I'd just like to bring that up to let people know that he's under an awful lot of pressure. On the
and it doesn't show at all.
How are you holding up? Yeah.
Well, and the numbers.
How do I look?
The numbers, like for every the 120 films and feature films in the festival this year, and for every one of those, there's like 35 that didn't get in. Based on the applications or based on the submissions, just for features, and then for the shorts, it's even higher.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, the criteria really hasn't changed. It's almost a boring answer in some way, but we're still looking for new voices. We're looking for original ways to tell stories. We're looking for creativity that's changing across all the different platforms. So that's what's always driven us. So that's the first guiding factor of selecting the films.
Okay. But I mean, talking about it, sort of the issues that are coming up this year. Yeah.
Yeah, we show the films that are on the filmmakers' minds, of course, especially in the documentary realm. A number of years ago, it was all about the financial crisis. I think we had 4 films in the festival back then. Now there's a lot that's permeating our whole reality. Guns in America, abortion, the chipping away of what is supposed to be legal in the abortion world. We have a wonderful doc on that. And just, a lot of issues, but also there's a whole lot of documentaries here that aren't issue-driven as well. And what we really notice is the changing face of documentaries in general. The use of animation, the use of really clever reenactments, even the graphics that they're using to tell these stories is quite different, looks different, and it's built to be more engaging for the audience. So documentary filmmakers, I think, are thinking of theatrical. I think they're thinking of how to grab audiences and bring them in. Do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, I love what's happening in documentary. It feels like the sort of the form of documentary. Certainly we see this in our documentary program as well. We just announced
We just added
an Art of Nonfiction fellowship to sort of support documentary filmmakers that are looking to sort of explore the form, the cinematic form of documentary. Where can you push the boundaries of it? How can you tell a true story differently? And what does sometimes truth even mean in documentary? So
Now, the Art of Nonfiction fellowships you just started, how's that different from the other forms of support you've already been giving?
well, it's just an expansion again of the type of documentaries that we can support. We have for 10 years now had in our documentary film program a granting fund that is supported by many foundations and other generous partners who mostly grant towards documentaries that deal with contemporary social issues. So there are certain documentaries that are exploring the form with varying subjects that we wanted to have an opportunity to sort of carve out a fellowship for them. It's not about the granting, it's complementary to the granting. It allows us to give them a kind of a creative experience, a little bit like a lab, to sort of further the creative practice of their work in balance with the
I'd like to say something about how documentaries came about in terms of a platform for the festival. On a personal level, I've always been a huge fan of documentaries, going all the way back to Emile D'Antonio, Pennebaker Leacock. I felt that those documentaries that I saw early on put you there, and that was exciting. You were there. You didn't know quite what was going to happen next. So years later, when we started Sundance, I felt that maybe if we could create a platform to elevate documentaries and see that they're much closer to narrative films, it would be a good thing if we could do it. And that use the festival as a platform to say, we think documentaries are important. And so that happened in the late 1980s and early 1990s. We were able to have enough documentaries to have it be of substantial category that we could then create something called the House of Docs. So over the years, we've tried to increase our opinion about the value of documentaries by how we show them. I just wanted to make that point, that was very much a part of our planning in the beginning, to take documentaries and use whatever Sundance was doing, if it survived, and elevate documentaries.
Okay.
There's lots of there's lots of big filmmakers that are here that have worked in documentaries a lot. When you go to Herzog is here, and Pennebaker, and Spike Lee is bringing the Michael Jackson documentary. It's really, it's good to have that sort of like the seasoned and the new here at the festival. I think it's really exciting.
What's the byplay between the veterans and the newcomers when they're here? No, as far as what do both sides get out of it when they're here?
I think they get what everybody gets. I mean, Sundance has built itself into a platform that's great for just launching these films and getting them that first step into the consciousness of audiences. But we one of the new developments that came after that was the doc premiere section. So we created a place for veteran filmmakers to come back. Liz Garbus is back with the Anderson Cooper Gloria Vanderbilt. Thank you. I always want to say Swanson, and I know that's wrong.
That would be good too.
Anderson Cooper's mother, Gloria Swanson. That's just how my brain works. I'm sorry. I'm tired.
That's a whole different movie. That's
But I think I wanted to just throw in terms of the new filmmakers, I love what Cooper and Trevor and the team do. Out of the 123 features that are here, 49 of them are first-time filmmakers. And, of course, that leaves room for some of the more seasoned filmmakers. And we have a wonderful batch, not just in documentary this year, also in feature. But I think the community that forms between the new generation coming in and the experienced ones is one of the most special things about this place.
Yeah, we had orientation that we did for all the filmmakers of New York area, and Pennebaker was there, and all the filmmakers almost lined up to sit with him and talk to him, and it was sweet and it was a wonderful time, I think, for him and the filmmakers.
very cool. Very cool. Now we talk about one of the issues. Talk about issues, but one of the issues that's been overriding and sort of been the conversation where the movie industry is based right now is the issues of diversity in filmmaking. We've had the issues with the Oscar nominations that came out this last week, and Spike Lee, as you mentioned his name, talking about possibly not going to the awards this year, and other people saying the same thing. From Sundance's standpoint, what do you think as far as Sundance does a lot as far as getting diverse voices out there. What can be done, what can you do as the Sundance Institute to further that outside of the independent world?
Well, diversity comes out of the word independence. Basically that's the principal word that we operate from. It's a word that I've operated from personally for most of my life, the value of the word independent. And so therefore diversity comes out of that. It's an automatic thing. If you're independent-minded and you're going to do things different from the common form, then you're going to have more diverse products. So that's something I think that we're generally pretty proud of, is how we show diversity in the festival, because we think it's important, because it's tied to the fundamental word of independent. So diversity, then it kind of speaks for itself in terms of the topic. So when we have these issues, as Cooper said, when we have these issues like that come up, we don't bring them up. We just put a spotlight on the artists who bring them up. In other words, the artists are making films about what's on the public mind, what's on the public conversation. And because we're in support of the artists, we say, well, what are they going to come up with? So they come up with those diverse points of view. We just put the focus on the artists themselves. We don't personally take a position of advocacy in that sense.
Anything diversity from you?
Yeah, you asked about what Sundance can do maybe as an organization with a long-time commitment to diversity in our work. What can we do to contribute to the conversation that's going on right now in more mainstream entertainment? And I think, it's a great question. I think the first thing we want to do is make sure we're really looking at our own work and making sure we're reaching into the populations that we want to reach, and servicing new storytellers from across the spectrum of our society, which I think we work pretty hard to do. And in terms of what we do as applies to the entertainment industry, and where people get jobs afterwards, what we've found is, together with a lot of organizations like ours whose job it is to support and find new storytellers, we do provide a really great pipeline of talent into the mainstream. And many of them choose to remain independent, and we love that, but some of them go and take other jobs in the mainstream. So I think we have a seat at that table in terms of providing a voice, constructive voice, to the decision makers to say, hey, take a look at this range of talent, take a look at how we've been able to develop them, and try to facilitate that handoff, so hopefully there's more opportunities to follow.
I think for us at the festival, it's really at that outreach level, making sure that anyone with a voice out there knows that there's a place here for them. If they, they put in the work and they make a good film, that we're there for them. And also, we're doing a lot of work at the youth level. I think that's where the work almost has to be done. So we have a program called Ignite, which is making sure that we have a young audience here at the festival, and it's grown now. So there's 300 youth that come to this festival between 18 and 25 years old that get to experience the festival, and we've saved a place for them, and then we do lots of extracurricular activities for them to talk to young people in the industry. The young filmmakers come and talk to them, and we do the high school program. So a lot of stuff we're doing to reach audiences at a younger stage so they can really build the future for us.
Okay, and you talked about the people that come through here moving on to the next step. I mean, there are great examples like Ryan Coogler's doing a
David
Marvel
Vernay,
movie.
Ryan Coogler, yeah.
Ryan Coogler's a great one.
Taika Waititi's going to do a Marvel movie, But you had a meeting in November, was it? October, involving the Women in Film Initiative. Can you talk a little bit about what came out of that?
Sure, it's an example of what I just said, which is we're not an advocacy organization. Our job is not to tell anyone in Hollywood what to do, but we have seen that there's from the perspective of what we do, we're interested in the artists that we work with, all of them having sustainable careers and getting their voices out there. So when we see barriers to that, which came through the research that we did about our own artists and their work, we felt like we had a story to tell about what some of those barriers were. So together with Women in Film, who had been doing the work with us on the research around gender, we invited leaders in Hollywood, studio presidents, agency partners, guild presidents, to come together and just have a conversation about what we had found in our research, what we saw were some of the barriers and problems facing women in the industry, and tried to create a constructive space for them to be able to think themselves about how to tackle it. And what was so exciting was they were welcoming that opportunity to get together across what might have typically been competitive lines and have that conversation. And we felt like it was a really constructive start. We're not intending to lead that work. That's not Sundance's main role, but we did feel like we had a story to tell and maybe had the ability to convene some of those people to get together with us.
So we want to put a spotlight on areas that weren't getting attention, and that's also been an objective of Sundance. For example, going all the way back to the early times, there weren't enough ethnic filmmaking to be shown. So we had Townsend come in, then we looked at for Black American filmmakers, then we had women filmmakers that weren't getting enough attention, so we had Nicole Offcenter, and we had Lisa Cholodenko. We started to put a spotlight, huh?
Kelly Reichert.
Kelly Reichert, a lot. So we picked out areas that were not getting enough attention or support, and we tried to focus through the lab program or the festival. Let's put a spotlight on this area. So last year, I think we were talking about, well, what do we want to look forward to for this year? I think we mentioned women and young people. So as John just said, we've moved forward with trying to do whatever we can to give more support for young people in film, so that's Ignite. And the women, you can just look at the work that's come through the festival. So you can see that we really do try to find areas that are not getting much support, and using the word diversity to push it, then we try to put it out there. We've tried to do that from the beginning.
Before I throw it over to everybody out here, I want to bring up one more thing, which is you're celebrating the 10th anniversary of the New Frontier program. Yeah. You talk a little bit about New Frontier and where...
Can I step into that one right quick?
Go for it.
Take it.
Where that comes from is that years ago we had a guy that we have somebody that works with us that would give us equipment because we couldn't afford, had a very low budget.
Well, we
so
still
therefore he made a deal with Sony. So they would give us equipment we would use for our lab projects, but then we had to return the equipment. So then the guy that was handling that decided, well, he wanted to support Sony. So we had a space on Main Street here. It was just a room, and they would put the new equipment in the room for people to come and see it. And that was fine, except about the second or third year, it started to bother me because I would go in there and I would say, wait a minute, this is a dead zone. This is like a bunch of robots in a room. There's no life here. And I realized there was no life because we weren't putting the artists with the equipment. So I said, let's shift gears on this. Let's have New Frontier be something that's a real new frontier. What happens when this new equipment is used by artists? What's the product? So New Frontier then moved from that point to showing the work that this equipment was producing with the artists.
And then now we're in 3 locations on the mountain here, where there's a big installation by Chris Milk as part of the new base camp. There's in Gateway, there's where all the panels will be, and then there'll be a VR lounge there. And then all the more bigger art pieces that we started trying. I mean, Shari Freelo is the chief curator of New Frontier, and she's done an amazing job of going and almost infiltrating the art world and saying, look, if you're going to start using moving image, you need filmmakers to help tell stories. And so now that's become a real great partnership, and we're connecting people all the time, the technicians mixed with the storytellers. I know we have some great programs that do that, but that's what you're seeing here. And the explosion of VR work is what is really, that's what this year is about. We just felt that it just kept coming, and it's fascinating. I don't know how many people have got the chance to do that, but I was slightly a little bit of a naysayer about it until you start putting on that headset and going into these realities that are so moving a lot of the times.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with that. I think also what's cool about New Frontier is it's not about VR specifically, although this year that's a lot of what the program is. It's about where technology and story are meeting. It's always a kind of, a little bit ahead. And so it's really fun to see what's next when you go there, I think.
What happens when you have technology? We keep advancing, and to the point where technology is not so visible. For example, I love the New Frontier. My impulse was to not have to use that. I would get to virtual reality without that. Well, we'll see if that comes about. I hope it does. Because I remember as a kid growing up, you had 3D and you had that kind of stuff, and it just got in the way. It just got in the way of things. And then we got past that. So I'm looking forward to the time when we can take virtual reality to a new place that doesn't require assistance with stuff.
Okay. So we'll start taking questions, and Mia and Monica have the mics, and we have one right over here first.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Sundance. Glad to be back. Sundance 2016. Question for Robert Redford. Picking up on what Sean was saying about diversity. You know the Academy really well, the Oscar Academy. And I'm just wondering, Sundance is so good at embracing change, but do you think something like the Academy, which is so set in its ways, can it embrace change, the kind of people it's talking about?
I thought you were handing that off for her to talk.
No, she's just holding.
Well, first of all, I'd like to straighten something out. There's always a tendency, it seems to me, to label things and to subjugate areas. And I want to make it clear that I'm not against the mainstream, because I've been part of that and very happily a part of that. A lot of the films that I've been involved with have been mainstream films. So this independent film idea that we came up with Sundance was not meant to be against, like insurgents coming in from the mountains to attack the mainstream. It was meant to broaden the category, that's all. It was just meant to broaden the category, but somehow that got mislaid along the way of me being against the mainstream. I'm not. And so I think it's important to make that point, that we're not against the mainstream. We try to use independent film to expand the category so it's a fuller picture, and therefore audiences have more options. They have more choices to make, rather than just being the mainstream. So having the festival up here is just as much a two-way street for audiences as it was for artists. In other words, we wanted to create a path for artists to have a place to show their work, okay? So it never occurred to me that we would be creating a second street of opportunity for audiences. Because when people came up here, my first thought was I wasn't sure the thing was going to work at all. In fact, I assumed it wouldn't. But what happened when more and more people came, I realized that audiences were coming up here, of all places, I mean, Utah, were coming up here to see stuff they couldn't see in the marketplace. And that's when I realized that we were just really creating an opportunity to have more viewership. And sometimes that got misunderstood, and I just wanted to make that clear.
I'm just wondering that Sundance is so good at embracing change and accepting the world, but do you think the Oscar Academy can do the same thing?
Why are you asking us?
I'm not into Oscars. I'm not into that, so. I mean, it's
I
nice,
hope for
but I'm
them they
just not into it.
can.
A question on this side? There's somebody. Oh, right here.
First, I want to thank Mr. Redford for making truth. My question has to do with virtual reality and what is happening here at Sundance. The virtual reality experience is a very individualized one. At this point. The historical theatrical participation was a collective experience, and the digital distribution is a home-based experience. What does that do to your concept of what the power of film and the power of storytelling, and what does that say about the potential future audience?
Well, forgive me, I didn't quite understand that there was sort of muffled from my ear.
Talking about the difference between a film which has an audience of hundreds versus a home experience, which is just your family, versus VR, which is a one-on-one thing.
Well, I believe, first of all, I guess that takes me back to a more fundamental feeling. One of the reasons that we have different parts of Sundance that have expanded from the original point. One of them is the Sundance Cinemas, and I think they're in 7 cities. And the idea was, when I was a kid growing up in Los Angeles, we were in a lower working class neighborhood, and the only thing you had was a movie every Saturday night. So we would walk to the theater, but you would see 2 features. You would see a couple of cartoons. You would see a Pete Smith short. You would see a newsreel from Pathé of the war going on in the front that involved your own relatives. So that's what you got. And then as time went on, I realized that that was shrinking. And when I got to the point where I was making film and I had to preview films in different places, I realized you'd have trailers that were blasting your ears off, 5 or 6 trailers preceding an actual film, but none of the other. And I thought, well, why can't we bring that back? Why can't we bring that experience back? Along with it, as films were getting smaller, moving into the home with TV and so forth, now you have your palm-sized screen. I guess I'm old-fashioned enough to believe that it will always be important for people to go into a movie house in the dark, collectively, with each other, and see a movie on a big screen. I will always believe that's important, and I still do. So whatever the technology drives us to, smaller and smaller and quicker and quicker and quicker, I will always believe that you can't really replace the value of gathering in a community space in the dark on a big screen and being transported, if you are.
And I still think there's room for both. I mean, there just has to be. And the intimacy of that one-on-one experience is the power of that medium. And then the power of film, being in a group, that is the power of that. And I think they're both important. And we still think audiences for independent film, I think, are still growing. And I think that they're excited and they're looking for new and different ways of telling a story, which connects everything we do at Sundance onto this one piece.
Okay.
I wanted to clarify one thing. I'm worried about what's going to come out on that Oscar thing. I can just see the headline, "I don't like Oscars." No, that's for Donald Trump to say, but what I mean is that I'm not focused on that part. To me, it's about the work. And whatever comes from that, whatever reward comes from that, that's great, but I don't think about it. Because there's nothing more important or exciting to me than the work when you're doing it. So once that work is done, I kind of back off. Whatever comes from that is fine. It's just nothing that occupies my thinking.
Monica.
Hi, I'm Ashley Kewish with KSL. My question's for Mr. Redford. We all know you came to Utah after making movies here, but what's kept you here all these years? And more importantly, what's kept the festival here all these years?
Missionaries. No, what's kept me here? What's kept me here? Well, I came here originally because of the beauty of the land. I came here because the place that I grew up in was falling into the sea with development. Los Angeles was going the way of all flesh. It was skyscrapers and freeways, and it was no longer the city that I once loved as a kid. So I moved further inland, came into the mountains, and so I came to Utah, and that was fine. But then Utah's doing what everybody else is doing, is developing like crazy. So the idea was, well, why not bring a festival here? Because it's weird. I mean, just make it weird, make it different, and bring it to Utah and put it in the middle of winter. Maybe some people like to ski. Wouldn't that be fun? You could ski and watch movies. And we wanted to keep things weird. That's why we hired John Cooper. We wanted to keep things offbeat, and so we still do, because I think it's just more interesting to make it a little bit offbeat. You can use the word weird if you want, but to me, that's why I came here, because I thought it was different. It was offbeat. It wouldn't be the place you would expect a festival to come. And so I'm perfectly happy that it's grown here.
I'll just say the city of Park City has been also just a great partner for us in putting on this event. And I think the fans, the audiences that come out to the festival every year wouldn't have it any other way if it wasn't quite in the mountains, in the snow, with all the challenges that presents. So.
And we're forming community, and community is tricky. You do have to work at it. It's by being in a place where it can happen. And so this is a destination festival. People come here. And I like that because they get away from their jobs, they get away from all that other stuff and just watch movies all day. And that is the community that is magic here. Park City is part of that, the beauty of the place. And I second what Keri says, the city has been amazing to us, and we have a whole, the Utah Advisory Board that's here helps us with that, and they're an amazing group of people. And they like to party, just those Utah people.
And now you've also got a good chunk of the festival down in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, down in Salt Lake, in Ogden, and it's a Sundance resort, so we've expanded that way. And those are, year after year, the biggest surprise from all the filmmakers when we do sort of a survey is how amazing those screenings were. It's every filmmaker's favorite screening was in one of those places.
Hi, my question's for Mr. Redford. How are you doing? Brendan McLean here, and I'm curious to get your opinion on the value of mentorship for young filmmakers. We came here as a group of 24 undergrads from UC Berkeley to cover the festival and get advice and learn and be on a path of self-discovery. What advice would you give to students, high school or college, to kind of like break down the barriers and increase access to getting into the industry?
Well, if I understand the question, what advice would I give to young, students that want to get into the...
So basically, yeah, I went through the Sundance Screenwriters Lab, and I found it to be an incredible experience that changed my life. And I've come to the festival twice now, and it's not pretentious. It's just, you can talk to anybody, and it's great. So how do you harness that, and how do people take
Well, I tell you,
advantage
I guess film schools have become important. They didn't exist when I was starting out. Maybe SC, but now they've become more prominent. There's film schools all over the place. I'm not sure that that's the answer, as much as experience, as much as getting out in the world and seeing what's going on by firsthand experience. Make an adventure for yourself. Hit the road. Don't go from school to film school and then make a movie. You can. But you're going to be relying on what you saw. You're going to be relying on the effects that filmmaker did, whether whoever it is. Oh, they created this thing with a camera. They did this thing with it, so I want to do that. To me, what's more important, if you want to tell a story and you want to own the story you're telling, get out in the world, hit the road, and have some real life experience that's going to feed your mind. And then you'll come back and say, yeah, I just went through this thing. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about... It took me a while to realize that the country I grew up in was really about winning. Everything mattered. And I was told as a kid, because I was active in sports, and the word you got was, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. And I found that was a lie, that everything mattered. And I thought, okay, I want that to be a subject of the work I do, that winning is everything. So I would say that came from my own personal experience of getting out in the world.
Okay, we have a question here. Hang on a second. Oh, there we go.
Thank you. Rob Reynolds from Al Jazeera English. Mr. Redford, I'd like you to just very broadly, if you would, give us your sort of State of the Union comments on the state of independent film and also of the film industry in general. Any trends that you really like or any trends that disturb you or you think are regrettable? Thanks.
Wow, that is a broad category. Film, mainstream and independent film. I think, starting with independent film, it's tough. It's always been tough. It's always been tough for independent film. But it's not exclusive. The tough stuff, I don't think, is exclusive to independent film because I think it applies to the film industry in general. I think it's tough for film in general because there have been threats, mostly in distribution. There have been threats that have come along that take away from what used to be a very simple equation. So you've got streaming, you've got online, you've got all kinds of new distribution. You've got Netflix and you've got HBO. You've got all these other areas out there that didn't exist way back. And so as a result, it kind of bleeds away from film. Film is not in a good place. Independent film is not in a good place, but it never has been. It's always been tough. It survives because it has value, but it's always been tough. I mean, for independent filmmakers to get funding, it's never been easy. Money is always at the bottom of the concern, and so therefore, mainstream, same thing. I mean, mainstream film, same thing. So money's at the core, and changing times are at the core, and also other threats, like I was saying, that didn't exist before. Online, streaming, so forth, so on. So I think it's always changing. The game is always changing, and as it changes, what remains is it's always tough for film.
I know you didn't ask me, but I'm going to tell you anyway. But since after seeing all the whole lineup of film, I'm coming at it from a slightly different place. We are really in such a place of evolution of the independent film community. The quality of work, the deepness of story, the use of craft, especially writing, permeates this whole program. And that's what I feel from that. And then now on the other side, the industry is also evolving so fast, but almost differently to kind of catch up with each other. I think they're almost in maybe a little more chaos than our filmmakers are, because our filmmakers know what they're doing. They know what to do that's good. But I think we're at this kind of wonderful place where independent film, as it continues to evolve, we're at this place where it's noticeable and you can feel it in all the work that we're showing at the festival.
You know, the other thing about this idea of independent film or mainstream film, technology has driven things quite a lot. It's made special effects more possible, CGI and things like that. And so a lot of the filmmaker, what for me is I watch all these transitions occur and I watch change coming and coming along. To me, the most important thing is the story. And storytelling is what it should be about. And so where's the story? When I see some films which I admire enormously in terms of the razzle-dazzle, the way the camera's used, the way special effects are used, because I understand that young people respond to that because you can create all these wonderful, exciting images. But where's the story? In other words, to me, that's essential. What is the story you want to tell? And I think sometimes people get so carried away with the ability to use technology to spin things and create excitement that they lose the story or they don't focus on the story. It's just something that I think maybe it's old-fashioned, maybe it's antiquated, but for me, story is essential. So at Sundance and our labs precede the festival. The festival here is great. It's a place that we have in Park City to showcase. But that's not the core of what we do. The core of what we do is several miles from here, and it's about development. And it's about what labs we have for filmmakers and documentary filmmakers and writers and actors, editors, production designers. It's the work, it's the development that's really, really important. And so when we do that, we put a lot of emphasis on our lab program for story. Before you even get going, before you want to get the camera to do this or that, what are you trying to tell us? What is the story you want to tell us? And move from there.
I have one over here.
Hey guys, Eric Cohn with IndieWire. So go back to that question about independence from earlier. Every year we hear about different film festivals cropping up in different cities around the world, and even though Sundance is still here, you have a lot more company. So how would you go about sort of differentiating that concept of independence from, you know, this very cluttered marketplace of film festivals we're facing now?
What'd you say, Sean?
Asking about with more festivals out there, how does Sundance stay the what it is, I guess.
I think Cooper, you should take that one because it's your program.
I think what we do and what we do well, I mean, the thing is all these festivals sort of have a different ilk or a different thing that they're trying to maybe do. A lot of them bring international films, a lot of them just are particularly documentary. I think us just staying with that notion, a simple one, of new voices has been, you know, our trademark. That's why we have so many world premieres. That's why we have so many young filmmakers. So we are a discovery festival, and that's what we do. We're a Discovery Institute as well.
I'd also add, I think it's great that festivals are cropping up everywhere. I think going to the question that was asked earlier about experiencing movies as a community, festivals in towns across America, I think there are, you know, I don't know how many there are, but a couple of thousand festivals if you count them all up. I actually think that speaks to people's desire to get together, see a movie together in a dark theater, and then talk about it afterwards. So, of course, Sundance, you know, retains its unique proposition in being about discovery, in getting a chance to be the place where a lot of films world premiere. Sure you guys know, but of the, 123 features in the program, I think 103 of them are world premieres here. So that does set us apart a bit as a, you know, as a first run festival. But I think the notion of a festival is a great way to preserve the cinema experience in the face of all these other technological changes.
And when you talk about globally, I mean, Sundance has been doing its own work, London, Hong Kong, and so on. How does that speak to expanding what Sundance is up to?
Yeah, we noticed this particularly. We have a very, very strong world cinema competition this year in particular. And that is coming from this notion that international filmmakers know what the platform of Sundance is, where back in the day we were this sort of distant thing for them. They know what it is, they know what they think that they can get out of it and what it can do for them. And then we're noticing that the films that we're seeing coming to us are different, a little different from that sort of typical international festival fare. They have that same independent spirit that the American films have. So we're seeing this sort of like almost global independence, and we're feeling that on the films that we got this year.
I might add to that a little bit about where our focus on that comes from, because it was brought about by something that happened outside of our ability, and that's globalization. We were a domestic festival for quite a while, but that was it. That was our platform, was strictly domestic. Then what happened when globalization came into the picture, and certain films could come out of those places that couldn't before, we were able to bring them to our festival. And at that point, we created an additional platform. Borders began to dissolve in places around the world in additional films. So we could literally, by doing that, by bringing films from other countries that illustrated how what they were up against, what they were living with against, and so forth. It was almost like a cultural exchange that we were able to create, where we'd say, okay, we want our American audiences, whoever's watching us, to understand, rather than us trying to decide what other countries are doing, let them speak for themselves. So that increased our platform, which although, as John says, I'm very happy about it, but it's all the more films that he has to deal with.
I think just building on that, the idea of the exchange and sort of letting other countries know, you know, getting to hear from other countries what they're up to. The festivals in London are a bit about that in the reverse, which is we have, you know, a great export from America coming from the studio films that go around the world. In Hong Kong, that Sundance has launched the world, but too often the independent films from US filmmakers don't get exposure in international territories. So for us to be able to, under the umbrella of Sundance, present a great program of films, bring the filmmakers there, introduce audiences to some great new artists, but also some perspectives of America that they may not have seen. I think that's another great value of it, and building audience for a different sort of American film in other places.
And our audiences in those places are young and they're kind of vibrant. And we're changing our location in London this year to the new Picture House Central, which is kind of an amazing cinema. But that's really, and in Hong Kong as well, that the youth that is coming to this, I think, is how I'm judging success of these projects.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Carla. I'm from ubnradio.com, and my question is along the lines of youth and streaming and technology. This year we saw a film, Beast of No Nation, stream on Netflix, and I believe it's an independent film, and I was just wondering how you guys feel about that, and if you think that will lead toward the future of independent film and film in general, that it will start streaming live on television like television shows have done on Netflix.
I'll take that one, and then you may want to add. You know, Keri Fukunaga, who made Beasts of No Nation, came through the Sundance Labs, and of course was here, I think, with Sin Nombre, right, a few years ago. I think what we feel, and I'll speak for some of the colleagues at Sundance, what we feel is, you know, filmmakers are here, they're telling their stories, and in a way, we want to follow their lead in terms of how they want those stories experienced. We don't judge theatrical versus VOD, you know, what way it gets to audiences. Certainly, I think all of us up here would agree that the cinema experience is something very special, and Beast of No Nations did have a theatrical release concurrent with its Netflix release. So I think it's great that a movie like that can reach, you know, millions of people through Netflix, which has, you know, a global distribution. With a click of a button, and I think it's great that people can go to the theater and see that movie because it is so cinematic as well. So we're platform agnostic, I would say.
Okay. Well, and with that, we'll wrap it up here.
This gal was going crazy. I didn't plant her in this thing.
You can stay. And who, that guy right there can stay too.
She wants to know what you're going to do.
I wanted to know, something that you discovered that really touched you personally that you just can't wait to experience here.
Did something touch me here at the festival?
She wants to know what you're doing for the next couple of days.
What's your schedule for the next 11 days?
I'm not going to tell you.
I am fascinated by the OJ documentary, that's 7.5 hours that we're going to be doing in this theater. It's phenomenal, and I love that we're really, like I said, with all the special events that we're doing, we crafted them for what was right for that piece, basically. And this one, we just said we have to show the whole thing. We have to do here, like we did with Top of the Lake. So I'm excited by that. It's happening tomorrow, so that's one of my exciting moments.
I would say don't forget the offbeat sections. I found one of the favorite movies that I saw among this selection in the midnight section, which I didn't really expect. I don't think of myself as a midnight fan, but it's a movie.
We don't either.
It's a movie called Under the Shadows. It's a great film, and found it in the midnight section. So I encourage everyone to sample every section. It's great stuff.
Okay, and with that, we will wrap it up. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Hydration and hand sanitizer. Stay healthy and have a good festival.
Thank you, Sean.